Good afternoon and welcome. Herzlich willkommen. Hartelijk welcome to our community meeting today. We are very happy that you join us from Groningen to Bremen to Brussels to Bordeaux, from Amsterdam to Berlin, Hanover, and everywhere in between our cross-border region. I would like to introduce to you my colleague and moderator today, Jan Oosterbrink.
Thank you, Elina. And this is my colleague and moderator today in our great Wunderline Community meeting, Elina Luchtenberg.
Thank you very much, Jan. Now, Jan, this meeting is called Wunderline Community Plus. Can you tell us what's so extra about this meeting? What's the plus?
Well, the plus is, of course, it's the second meeting this year. The first one we had in April. And the plus is that we're now focusing on connecting Europe to our regions, connecting regions. This combination will be the main aspect in this Wunderline Community Plus meeting, with interesting parts, with a focus from DG Move and new developments in Europe and Brussels, European Year of Rail. Then we get a part concentrating on innovations in the railways. What is happening with Deutsche Bahn, ProRail, and in the end we come back to our cross-border region. The Dutch side, the German side, regionaal, grensübergreifend zusammenarbeiten. That's where the focus will be on. As you hear, I've been speaking English, af en toe Bas Duits en een beetje Nederlands, and that will be our languages for today. So, for the European level, we start with this English language.
First of all, before we can start, we have a few notes. And that is the first thing, you can ask questions to our speakers, and you can do so by the chat on the right side of your screen. Now, all the questions are not public, so they are not for everyone to see, but they will go to our Wunderline back office. And it's also good to know that this session is being recorded and will be put on YouTube very shortly after. And then last but not least, I wish you a very pleasant meeting and I hope you very much enjoy it. So Jan, should we start? Let's start, and to stay in Wunderline terms, get this train going, shall we?
Yes, high speed. Although normal human speed for today. We start with our first guest, Mr. Lindner, State Secretary, Lower Saxon, Staatssecretair, Niedersachsen, and he's a chair of our Wunderline steering group. Mr. Lindner, welcome to you. Nice to have you here in our meeting. Once again, the second time I would say. Unfortunately online, but that's the case with these corona things going up and down. Let's put it that way. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, everyone. Guten Tag from Hanover. I'm pretty fine these days, although the corona figures are very much rising in Hanover as well. And so we are facing the difficult task to adjust our corona measures again. It's a bit like a déjà vu from last year.
Okay, thank you.
Fleur Greper, Regional Minister of the Province of Groningen, couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but she has a welcoming message for you, and that's going to be a short video. Please.
Welcome in this Wunderline Community meeting today. My name is Fleur Greper. I'm Regional Minister for the Province of Groningen, and unfortunately I'm not able to be there with you today. But for you to know is that Bernard Niedler, my colleague in Niedersachsen, is there to represent both our countries and both our regions. And I think the fact that Bernard Niedler is representing both our regions is a clear sign of the cooperation between Niedersachsen and the Province of Groningen. I hope that today will show you, and maybe by the fact that Bernard Niedler is representing both our regions, show you that we work very closely together to bring the Wunderline a step further. And we not only do that for the reasons of mobility, but also because the
Wonderline is connecting our regions on cultural level as well as on economic level. And everywhere I go, as a minister of the province of Groningen, I meet a lot of excitement when it comes to the Wonderline. And I hope very much that today will show you why we are so excited when it comes to the Wonderline project. Thanks to the European Union, a lot has been realized already in the last couple of years. ProRail and Deutsche Bahn have been working on construction phase 1. And within that construction phase, we have made the train to Winschoten a fast train. And here in Scheemda, we're working on doubling the track. And of course, when you do that, you have to have a very intense communication with our surroundings and our neighborhood. And with that, we can really achieve the first construction phase of the Wonderline. And of course, we very strongly hope, and it is still on plan, that the Friesebrugge, a little bit our bridge as well, will be in place in 2024 as well. But still, a lot needs to be done. We will strengthen our chain mobility to make sure that everyone can reach our Wonderline train stations and make sure that our communities and our businesses can cooperate. And with that, we pay our contribution to the Green Deal of the European Union, reduce CO2 and make sure that our regions are ready for not only our generation but future generations as well. Recently, the Wunderline Chain Mobility Network has achieved the Bundesdeutsches Modellprojekt, an award for enhancing sustainable mobility project in the rural area. And I would very much like to congratulate Bernhard Lindner and everyone within the Wunderline community with this achievement. I hope very strongly that you have a very wonderful Wunderline meeting today, and hopefully I will be there again the next time we will meet. Enjoy your afternoon.
Ronnie Meijer, staatsraad from the Free Hanseatic City of Bremen, also would like to say a few words to you in a video.
Dear Mr. Lindner, dear Mrs. Graper, good afternoon, representatives of the European institutions, dear Wonderline community. My name is Ronnie Meijer. I'm the State Secretary for Climate Protection, Environment and Mobility here in the Free Hanseatic City of Bremen. I'm standing in front of Bremen Central Station, which is the starting or end point of the Wonderline project. Unfortunately, I cannot attend the meeting today, but with this video message, I would like to underline the strong support we have here in Bremen for our project, the Wonderline. The Wonderline project helps us to deepen the connections between Bremen and the neighboring regions in the Netherlands or in Lower Saxony. It is a good example to deepen and promote the Dutch-German cooperation. For example, younger people living in the region will increase their mobility without cars. And it is a good example for a linkage between the cities and the rural areas between Groningen and Bremen. We all know that the climate change, the climate crisis, is one of the most dangerous crises we all face. And we know that the transportation sector has to be transformed more to green and more to sustainable. So the Wonderline project is a good example for a transnational transporter project to reach the EU targets for 2050. I'm very grateful that the European Union funded the Wonderline project by its Connecting Europe facilities. It is a good example of how the European Union can improve life in the region. For today, I wish you a good meeting, and I hope the Wonderline project continues to bring us closer together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Graper and Mr. Meijer, for your welcoming messages. All right, back to you, Mr. Lindner.
Yes, Mr. Lindner. To get back to you, you heard your colleagues from Bremen, from Groningen, with all these nice words, but also saying what the Wonderline is all about. What were your experiences looking back at the first Wunderline community in April? What did you take home?
Yes, thank you very much. I totally agree with Fleur Graper and Secretary Meijer that our collaboration is working very well, and we are really in a very constant communication. And I also agree with Fleur that our project is still on the track, with all stakeholders along the line working very closely together with Deutsche Bahn and ProRail. And it's really remarkable that so far solutions have been found for any problems that arose. And I personally am very optimistic, therefore, regarding the future. I expect the same for the future, for the next phases. And that's why I'd like to thank ProRail and Deutsche Bahn and all partners who are actively working towards practically implementing the preparation of our line. I would also like to congratulate Fleur Graper for the award that she mentioned. From my point of view, this is a success for all of us. And therefore, a big thank you to Ms. Fabik, who presented the project and took this award home for all of us. And of course, my thanks also go to the entire team and all our partners. We are well on our way. And in the contest, the Wunderline Go app also received the most positive remarks. And this model project is a national and international example of what mobility can look like. So I totally agree with Fleur that our cooperation is going very well. In the last Wunderline community meeting, we could state that some progress has already been achieved so far. In July, we would celebrate the symbolic groundbreaking ceremony for the famous Friesen Bridge. The state of Niedersachsen will contribute 10 million euros to the new construction of the Friesen Bridge, and we will conclude a contract with Deutsche Bahn for this new construction. And in this context, I'd really like to thank Deutsche Bahn for the really excellent cooperation. And we also had a great talk with Secretary Meyer from Bremen, and I'm very pleased that Bremen will want to get even more involved in the problem and the project in the future than before. And working closely together really helps to strengthen the whole region for its residents with the support of the federal government, the European Union, and to secure important investments for the infrastructure. And we have also seen success in the chain mobility project, a very important project in our Wunderline project. And the relaunch of this new network was ratified by the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding for the continuation of chain mobility. So all in all, a very successful and good meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Lindner, for just telling what happened the last months, the last half year. Just maybe a bit of personal question, which comes up now to my mind. The railway, more and more, connection from Groningen-Bremen, Wunderline, is not so much only a railway project, but it's enhancing cross-border mobility, cross-border cooperation, enhancing chain mobility, and trying to win an award to be one of the best in the Bundesrepublik. Is it sometimes hard for you how to make people in your ministry, because you're responsible and working in a ministry of Wirtschaft, Arbeit, Verkehr, Digitalisierung, and the Wunderline is much more than just traffic. So how do you deal with it?
Indeed, the project is not only about traffic, it's about tourism and many forms of cooperation. And it's, first of all and foremost, it's a truly European project. And it's the only European rail network project without borders. And that was one reason because of which it was already, we were able to win EU funding. So this is really significant. And that's why in our ministry, we work closely together with the different departments of our ministry, not only in the one sector of traffic.
Okay. And what are the future steps for the coming months to be done by the Wunderline? What's to be realized as upcoming?
Yes, from my point of view, it's important to reflect on the future of the whole region. The Wunderline can bring more students and workers and tourists to the region and give them the mobility to cross the borders. And the question is, what can stakeholders in the region use this new connection, and how can they benefit from the Wunderline if it starts operating in 2024? And the question is also, what can regional stakeholders do to ensure that the Wunderline will be a success? So there's a lot that we can do between now and 2024 to make the Wunderline even more attractive. And as a state, we can support the relevant activities, not only financially. The Wunderline connects northern Germany with the northern parts of the Netherlands, and it forms a faster, more comfortable and more environmentally friendly connection. And this will improve the mobility not only of the residents on both sides of the border, but also for other people from both of our states, and strengthen the entire border region. And the cooperation with Bremen will also offer the opportunity to create a bridge between the Netherlands and Scandinavia via Bremen in the future. And we want to work on this together in the spirit of the European idea. At the same time, we must keep an eye on construction phase 1. We all expect that at the end of 2024, after the completion of the famous Friesen Bridge, the Wunderline will operate without rail replacement traffic and will promote the connection of people in the Netherlands and Germany on the rail between Bremen and Groningen and break down barriers. And we are on the right track for this so far. And I'm looking forward to hearing later from Mr. Van de Kamp and Mr. Rauters to find out what the chances of winning further EU fundings are, because that would help us a lot on the way.
Mr. Lindner, you already spoke about the strong characteristics of the Wunderline. I am wondering, what do you think is the unique selling point of the Wunderline? What makes this project so unique? Oder einzigartig, finde ich ein sehr schönes Wort.
The main point, the most interesting point of this project is that it's a truly European project. And it's the only European rail network project without borders. And this is really the main selling point from my point of view. We show that Europe can work. We all know that we have difficulties, we have problems, we have arguments within the European Union. And we can make a very good example here between the Netherlands and Germany, between Groningen, Bremen and Niedersachsen, that we can work very closely together to improve the connectivity between our countries, that we can break down borders, that we can move more closely together.
You already said the Wunderline being a European project. What role do you think Europe should play in the further development of the Wunderline?
Well, as I have already mentioned, we have been able to get European funds for our project, and that's why we currently prepare another CEFT application. And so we hope that we can get an additional funding, and that will be very helpful in Balkan.
All right, Mr. Lindner, one last question. It's good to see that this cooperation, Bremen, Groningen, Niedersachsen, Hanover, is doing so well. And I know, as I've been told, and I can see it from time to time, that you and Mrs. Graper are getting along very well during the steering group meetings, but also other kind of bilateral meetings or phone calls. And it was said that Mrs. Graper might be going next spring to Hanover, just to visit you, see how things are going in your ministry. What is the actual state of affairs? Is this really going to happen, that a regional minister from Groningen is going for 1 or 2 days to your office and join you?
Oh yes, it's really gonna happen. The visit in Hanover and my visit in Groningen. I'm very pleased to announce that Fleur Graper will come to Hanover the beginning of February next year and join me for 2 days. And I'm already planning a nice program so that I can show Fleur how I work, what the main topics are in Niedersachsen at the moment. And I also plan to go to Groningen a bit later next year. So we will make it happen. It's going to become reality, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Great. That sounds very good, especially you also coming to Groningen, because we know you've been eager already sometimes to go there, but this far it didn't manage. It didn't work because of Corona, of course. Nevertheless, good to hear this. Good that this cooperation is also on a personal level in a very well shape, in a good stadium. Thank you so far, Mr. Lindner. We've been talking before about the European level and the European aspects. We just be going to that part. You would possibly be staying also, Mr. Lindner, for the next part, where we have some representatives from DG Move, Harold Ruiters, and the European Year of Rail. So if possible, we might come back to you for 1 or 2 small questions at the end, if that's okay with you. We'll see if it fits to your time schedule. Thank you once again.
The year 2021 has been declared the Year of Rail to highlight the benefits of rail as a smart, safe and sustainable means of transport. In the studio we have Harold Ruiters, Director of the European Commission, DG Move, and Wim van den Kamp, the Dutch Ambassador of the Year of Rail. Now we're gonna chat with you in a short in a few minutes, but first we have a video, a little teaser video on the European Year of Rail. Let's start with you, Mr. Ruiters. You have prepared an update on European rail developments. We are, of course, very eager to hear about these new plans, so I'm hereby virtually handing over the microphone to you. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Irina and Jan. Do you hear me well? Okay, yes, great. So it's fantastic to be here with you, Mr. Lindner. Good to see you, and also happy that Fleur Graper and Mr. Meyer could, from their side, give a short message. Look, it's relatively easy to speak here to this community in a way that we have had a Green Deal declared in December 2019, a new sustainable and smart mobility strategy in December 20, and in December 21, there will be a new TEN-T proposal, and in December 22, there will be a multimodal digital mobility services proposal. So we seem to make December an active month of getting forward on track on the Paris and now Glasgow agreement towards reducing by 55% and then 90% in 2050 or CO2 emissions, and putting Europe on a path towards zero emission mobility. And the Wunderline is a perfect project that is doing that between 2 member states in Niedersachsen and in Groningen, but for me also beyond, because it is connecting from Groningen also to Leeuwarden, to the south of the Netherlands, and from Bremen to Hamburg, to Copenhagen, to Berlin and beyond. And I do not see the Wunderline as an isolated part, but as an important chain that will link across borders. And Mr. Lindner, you can be sure that the European Union, for cross-border rail projects, ticks all the boxes that normally make money from the Connecting Europe facility flow. We have been doing that so far. We have been co-funding, and we are grateful that you are putting the project not just as an infrastructure project, but also as a real mobility and people project that through also your chain mobility is a kind of a precursor of mobility as a service, where people can easily take a train and connect with their transport means, but also light and easy mobility that could be at the city level of buses, of trams, of metros, of e-bikes, of the city bikes, and of walking as well. And this kind of chain mobility that you have been putting into place, I think is demonstrating that this Wunderline is not just only about creating a new Friesenbrücke until 2024, but has a long-term perspective. And that's also where I would like to give the input now, Elina and Jan, because very, very soon, on the 14th of December, the Commission is going to put forward a number of proposals, amongst which the 10T. And on the 10T, of course, you will find back the Wunderline. Don't be afraid that it would fall off the map. Rather, on the contrary, it will be reinforced. It will be reinforced in several dimensions. It will be reinforced in the dimension that we are going to integrate into our proposal urban nodes. So far, urban nodes or cities were limited to just the capitals or the biggest cities in Europe, 83. We are going to include all urban nodes of 100,000 inhabitants and more into the 10T network. That means 421 cities will be integrating there. And on your line, that will not only be Groningen and Bremen, but also, and I would want to give an impulse here, also Leeuwarden to the west of Groningen and Oldenburg to the west of Bremen. These 4 cities will be urban nodes, and it's not just for the pleasure of being on the map, it will also come with obligations. So we will require from our side that these cities will have a sustainable urban mobility plan. And through your chain mobility that you have put in place, I think you are very well placed already. And as far as I informed, some of these cities already have a sustainable urban mobility plan. And we are working very closely together, for instance, with Bremen, which is one of our example cities that have even been having a reward in the Civitas community in the past years. And also Groningen has been very active in that respect. We also will propose that there will have to be certain indicators linked to these sums, because we want to measure towards, for instance, zero fatalities, on CO2 emissions, on congestion. And for these urban nodes, we also would like to promote that there are very good urban passenger hubs and freight hubs. And this is also being created already on both sides. But the reason why we are doing this is that with our urban mobility policy so far at European level, we were very much, and Wim van der Kamp knows this inside out, we were very much on a subsidiarity level. You remember when the package of 2013. And now, due to, let's say, the Green Deal, but also to the European Court of Auditors, we would like to get to a level that we get also a legislative part, a legislative component there, which is necessary to our view, because urban nodes are a key component of the 10T network and are the point where we realize multimodality. It's there where citizens can change between tram, bus, train, plane, and it is there where also freight coming from our harbors like Bremen and Hamburg will allow to be interchanged, and that city logistics can be organized in a green way. So these urban node insertion is an important impulse that I wanted to already highlight. And the second impulse that I want to give is that the standards that are there for the core network will be gradually phased out over the comprehensive network. And thereby, there will be no distinction in 2050 anymore between core and comprehensive, because we are going to take 3 steps: the core network until 30, the extended core until 40, and the comprehensive until 50. And by 2050, the whole 10T network should be at the same high standard. And so also all the regions, also those parts of the regions, Länder, provinces, which are not on the core, will benefit from the same quality of transport on the 10T as everywhere else. I think this is an important message also towards Leeuwarden and Groningen, towards Oldenburg, and towards both or all the provinces and territories in Europe, because thereby we will have equality and better mobility also at a refined level of the regions and the cities. But this also, again, like for the cities, comes with a number of obligations and with a number of engagements. It means that the standards are going to be expanded. And for the Wunderline in particular, I am looking, Wim, you as ambassador for rail, the European Year of Rail, at the electrification of the line between Leeuwarden, Groningen and the German border. Because once we have passed the Friesenbrücke, we are on electrified track. Mr. Lindner knows that very well. 1 track for the part, 2 tracks as well. So this is something clearly missing. And I think, Wim, that especially for such a cross-border link, we cannot have an exemption from that. It might be that the lines going to the north of the Netherlands, etc., can remain perhaps with a hydrogen solution in the future, but in the longer run, so we speak 2040, 2050, the Wunderline, to my feeling, shall be electrified, because we also want to achieve a modal shift to rail. More people using that rail connection, and also more freight using that rail connection. And at a certain point in time, you have a positive cost benefit to impose electrification. But it also links to the other standards, so the 740 meter trains, the P400 loading gauge, and so on and so on. And then to wrap up, of course, these new impulses that I'm giving to the Wunderline today fit into what has been done by the Wunderline community, and for which go my praise. Because you are living this project and you are using European money, and as soon as this money will be fully used in the actual years now ongoing, I expect that you will come forward for applications for further funding, for making this a reality. And as I said, this being, of course, on the 10T cross-border rail, has the highest priority of all. But I also ask Mr. Lindner and your colleagues to be aware that through this 10T, we already are planning, and I am certainly personally already making a planning for that since a few years, for the years 28 to 34, the next MFF, where I hope that we can achieve together that there will be a CEF3. And even for the years 35 to 41, a CEF4. Because such projects, Wim, you know, are not realized within a year, 5 years, or sometimes a decade. Our biggest projects will be realized until 2030. And this impulse that I'm giving now is to already start the planning now for the years 2040 and 2050. And that in the end, we also convince our budget and finance ministers to be with us in a long-term planning. It's only in that way that we will achieve the CO2 ambitions and the Green Deal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruiters. Very interesting to hear your perspective on this and to see the Wunderline not just as an isolated project, but as part of the larger railway network, actually. More on this later. I would like to continue with you, Mr. van der Kamp. You are the Dutch ambassador of the Year of Rail. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the initiative and its objectives?
Yes, good afternoon to all of you, especially to Mr. Lindner and Mr. Harald Ruiters. Ich weiß nicht, wie man auf Deutsch sagt, guten Mittag oder guten Nachmittag. Vielleicht ist Nachmittag nach 1600 Stunde. Aber jedenfalls herzliche Grüße aus Den Haag. I will continue in English because my Deutsch ist während 20 Jahre in Entwicklung. Und ich mache immer Fortschritte. Aber when I have to explain my task, I can better do this in English. No, first, my first task is to promote European railways and, of course, also the national railways. Don't forget, in the Netherlands, but also in Germany, we have still many challenges on our national railway systems. But cross-border is one of the elements in my duties. Let me say it like that. And I'm very surprised in a positive way how in the last 45 minutes the Wunderline project is extended. We are now not only in Hanover, but we are also in Leeuwarden, and we are now also in Oldenburg. So it becomes a real European project. At this moment, I'm connected to almost 7 or 8 cross-border projects in the Netherlands, because we not only talk about the Wunderline, but we also talk about Coevorden, Bad Bentheim, Enschede, Nijmegen, Duisburg, Venlo, Kaldenkirchen, Heerlen, Aken, and then we still have 2 projects with our Belgian friends. And if I made last week again a study of Wunderline, then I have 3 remarks. The first remark is that I'm very surprised in a positive way about the governance model you created together. So with the province of Groningen and with the state of Niedersachsen, I think this is the real cooperation we need in Europe. And let me be very honest, it's not only about trains, it's also about the future of the European Union. And we have to take care for this subject in these times with tensions of nationalism, COVID, and all these elements. And as a former politician, I have to underline this. My second remark is about the technical challenges. I'm so surprised. Let me say it very carefully. I'm not disappointed. I'm surprised that we have to overcome so many technical challenges. If you see what DB Netze is doing around the German side of the project, ProRail in the Dutch side of the project, then you see that our engineers still have to do a lot of work. And it are not all mega projects, but the devil is in the detail. How the security systems fit together, the electrification, safety, and so on and so on. And thirdly, I have to be a little bit critical. What about the national payments? Because if I see what Harald Ruiters is offering to you, I think Europe is at the first stake. But if I see, and when I talk to different people from Wunderline as well, our national governments, even regional governments, I think they have to take care that the tempo of Mr. Harald Ruiters is still fitting in our national and regional tempi, because there is always a lack of money and priorities are made in Berlin, Hanover, Groningen and The Hague. And I think in the governance model, it's really a challenge that this timetable of national investments is still fitting in the timetable of Mr. Ruiters. These are my remarks in the first round. And please go on. I met the project for the first time in 2014 when I was in the European Parliament. To be honest, in the year 2050, I'm 97. 97, yes, 97. So I don't know if I'm still active at that moment, but anyway, you can phone me at that moment. Back to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. van der Kamp, and thank you very much for also your remarks. We still have some work to do with the Wunderline, if I'm listening to you. Thank you very much for being here.
Yes, we got a question from the chat, and I'm addressing to you, Harold. We know already a long time, more than 10 years, or sorry, just Harold. And by the way, Mr. Lindner, I would shortly after address to you if you have any specific questions at this moment. But Harold, there came one question from the chat. You've been mentioning electrification of the Wunderline. And the question came up. Does this mean the end? It's a bit hard, maybe, or black-white, the way I ask my question, of all other developments such as electric trains, batteries, or hydrogen?
No, it's a fair question. The TEN-T regulation, as it is today, already foresees as one of the requirements electrification, and so it is normal and foreseen that the Wonderline shall electrify or be electrified by 2050, as it is on the comprehensive network. What, of course, will not exclude that in between you would have other solutions that can be deployed on the Wonderline, like hydrogen trains or battery fuel trains. But I think that the ambition should be higher. I mean, the German part of the Wonderline is already electrified, and it would be logical to continue that electrification, in particular if we would like to see many more people taking that train or many more goods using that line. At a certain point, there comes let's say, a calculation point where the electrification will become with a positive cost benefit. And we are in the European side here in the Commission, of course, aware that in certain cases the cost benefit will not be positive, but we would wish to see that the Wonderline, which is a cross-border one, would be so successful that you could have electrification. So it is not excluding it, and I think it can be a very good development, and we are co-funding hydrogen, and in particular green hydrogen in Groningen ourselves from the Commission side. But in the longer run, I would be happy to use those green hydrogen for lines which are having a lower cost benefit, or for instance for industrial purposes. Whereas I believe that the Wonderline can be so successful that you can electrify.
All right, thank you for this additional remarks. Mr. Lindner, you heard Harold Ruiters, DG Move, European Commission, and Wim van der Kamp, Dutch Ambassador, European Rail of the Year. Are you having any specific questions at this moment to one of those gentlemen?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Ruiters and Mr. van der Kamp. You gave us very helpful information, and we are very grateful for that. And concerning your German language skills, Mr. van der Kamp, to my mind, they are very good already. And to your question, there's no Guten Nachmittag in German. There's only Guten Tag. So there's no good afternoon in German, unfortunately. And so in this respect, the English language is more precise than German, actually. I do have a question. The question is, to me, if we really have done enough already to promote train use, and what else besides the chain mobility can we do to increase the passenger volumes on the Wonderline to make it a real success? What would you propose and suggest?
If Harold is still hesitating a bit, I will be so frech to answer the question. No, as I said, I was informed last Tuesday about the state of play of Wunderline, and we all know that the year 2024 is so important that we need the new bridge, and hopefully it is being built and finished in 2024. Secondly, I'm impressed by the number of buses which are now running to replace the railway. And this, let me say, quotum of persons who are interested in traveling, we should extend it, but we take care that we are not going to lose it, because Dutch, German, European bureaucracy is taking too much time. In the meantime, I see that the number of German students in Groningen, when I'm there in the Three Sisters, it's a famous cafe, there the German language is increasing. So there is a lot of attention of German students, and hopefully because these bloody Dutch students, they become more and more national, we have to extend the exchange. For example, Enschede Münster, it works out very well, but I don't know exactly if there are many students who are going from Groningen to, let me say, Niedersachsen or even Schleswig-Holstein. And of course, all of this under the umbrella of the Green Deal and the modal shift. Because at this moment, sorry, Harold, the Commission is not always making the tough choices. If I see how the road sector is still, let me say, promoted, if I see aviation on the short haul is still there, and I'm not leftist, not at all, I'm sustainable, but the modal shift, the famous modal shift, more travelers in the train and less in cars and aviation, this idea, I think both the province of Groningen and the regering van Neder-Saxen, we have to promote this more and more to our citizens. And take care, it's not always a problem when you have to travel 30 minutes longer. You always can think about your own sins in that 30 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Wim van der Kamp. Harold, just time still for a short reaction to what Mr. van der Kamp is saying?
Yes, he gave me just enough time to think about my sins as well, because you're saying that the Commission is not, let's say, proactive enough. Well, I will agree with him. That's very many times we haven't. Indeed, you're right, Wim. But here we are going to put on the table a package that is very, I think, convincing. An infra package that should be there until 2050. We hope that Niedersachsen and Groningen will adhere to it by building it, because the first thing you need, as you say, Wim, is the infrastructure. Otherwise, there is no service possible. So the Friesenbrücke needs to be there. The electrification needs to be there. Then, of course, you need services and ticketing. You have been doing that with your chain mobility. But we will also propose from our side mass as an obligation in these urban nodes. And we come with the ticketing because our young students who are perhaps having a beer in the three sisters or whatever it was called, the pub, then they still would like very easily to book also their tickets and be able to travel across Europe, not having those difficulties if you want to travel cross-border that we now face, which are horrendous. And then I think, Mr. Lindner, the fact that the Wunderline will connect with high-speed rail in Bremen, that we will have the Fehmarn opening in 28 and thereby opening to Scandinavia, that we will have new connections towards Hanover. As we know, now we are finally designing the outcome after long discussions on the Y or the Ypsilon-Trasse. So I'm very happy on that as well. Then I think there is all possibility, Wim, that we finally will shift more. And that is, let's say, battle of the short distance, let's say the 3, and I would even go further than 3 hours, I would go like 4 or 5 hours of travel time are certainly possible in train. At least I prefer going even up to 6 hours by train than 3 or 4 hours by flight, especially nowadays with COVID and with all the checks and the changes that you have to make. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Routers. Mr. Lindner, thank you very much. You see that one little question brings such an answer and discussion between two experts, so to say, from DG Move and from the European Year of Rail. Mr. Harold Ruiters, you've been giving us a lot of homework. First, we should maybe change our name in future. It's not only connecting regions, connecting Europe, but it's also connecting urban hubs. Second, there should be on the way we are to zero emission. And third, and that means even much more homework, especially politically, electrification. I'll leave this out for this minute because it's otherwise too long, but it just means that we might have an extra workshop with the two of you with a very intensive discussion on how to realize things on these fields and all the points you've been mentioning. Thank you for this, my summary so far.
Yes, we've taken it on board, and we would like to discuss this with you another time, because unfortunately we don't have any time left right now. Thank you very much for being here, and I wish you all the best with enhancing cross-border railway connections in Europe and of course in our region. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at home or wherever you are watching, thank you for the remarks on the chat, because something came in as well, and we will, as said, make a brief summary afterwards, because it's all very interesting to pick this up and give appropriate answers to this. The next part will be on innovation. Harold Ruiters already mentioned some of the aspects, the innovations which are important for the European Union. But we are working also as Wonderline on innovation. And mainly, of course, this is done by the two organizations, as I should say, working in the field, realizing our cross-border railway line, ProRail and Deutsche Bahn. We now have two experts on the field of innovation. And from the German Bahn, we have Mr. Pfeiffer, Janek Pfeiffer, and we have Peter Lautenbach from ProRail. Welcome, gentlemen. Short question for a start. Mr. Pfeiffer, to start with, how's the Wunderline doing on the German side? What about the realization, planning? Are we up to schedule? Please.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. As far as I know, we're up to schedule. They are currently doing the approval planning. So 3 sections of the Wunderline are being prepared for handover to the authorities. One of these sections, I think, is going to be handed over this year even. And the other the two other sections are going to follow shortly. And this is obviously the first step to involving stakeholders like the municipalities and getting back some some expert opinions on what kind of planning is being done.
Okay, thank you so far. Same question to you, Mr. Peter Lautenbach, ProRail. What about the realization on Dutch side between Groningen and the border?
Yes, thank you. It's good to say that the project manager, Mr. Eichelbaum, couldn't attend this meeting, so he asked me to be there in his place. So I know the rough line, but if there are details, I'm sorry, then I have to ask Mr. Eichelbaum. But on the planning, I know the first phase, it's already mentioned by Mrs. Graper, and it's about the fast train to Winschoten. We have to do some things in 2022, in February and May, and then that's realized. Then also we have a second phase with higher speed between Nieuweschans and the border, and that is planned, and I have to check my notes because I want to say it right. That's planned in 2023. And we're also working on the third phase, and that's a double track between Scheemda and Winschoten. And that's not already planned for realization, but we are working on it for the processing with people living around those tracks. So that's are the highlights from the planning in the Netherlands.
As mentioned before by Mr. Ruiters, innovations play a big role within European rail development. Now, a very interesting innovation is the use of drones. Mr. Pfeiffer, you use them a lot at Deutsche Bahn. I would like you to explain more about it in a minute, but first we are going to look at a short introduction video on drones. During the video, I noticed a question came in from the audience to you, Mr. Pfeiffer, and that is, what exactly is the added value of drones, do you think?
Well, we have many people working on these projects. Like Mr. van de Kamp said, this is a huge challenge to involve all the technical specialists. And with drones, we can create a kind of digital twin that is available for everybody who sits in an office. Because we cannot get all the specialists down to the track, so to look all these kilometers of construction site by themselves. And the main added value is to create this digital twin of the of the existing situation, so we can look up all kinds of things that we are not sure of in this area. This obviously doesn't mean that we don't have to go there anymore, because there will still be doubts and we have to go to the site. But it's a question of how many people have to go to the site, and because many challenges can be met by looking at these models created from drone imagery.
And is it really so that drones are measuring more accurately than the human eye? Is that true?
Well, the human eye sends data to the brain, and the brain then tends to forget after some time, while the drone data will be still available on a server, and the models we create from the drone data, we can overlay them with our planning models and check if things come together correctly, or if there are certain risks to be expected from this. And I think that's the main reason. It's persistent data, and what the human eye measures is something that is not there forever, and it's not easy to hand over to other people.
Okay, I get to you right away, Mr. Peter Lautenbach. I have one additional question, Mr. Pfeiffer, that came up into my mind. Just imagine, I'm living near the railway. It's plus 30 with climate change. It's not to be unimagined. So, and I'm lying sunbathing in my garden, and then a drone comes by. So my question is, shortly said, what about privacy?
Well, we have artificial intelligence, as other companies also use, to filter out faces and people from the imagery. So let's say probably about 90% of these things are filtered automatically, and no human eye ever sees them. And if we detect some left out rests, people will erase that. And it's basically only specialists who ever get to see this for how do you say, for checking if these automatic procedures work correctly. But they are automatically filtered, and not only faces or people, but also, for example, license plates of cars and things like that. They are filtered out. We don't need this data. What we want from the drones is static data, like houses that don't move. But we actually even cut private property away from things. We only make available data from public property or railway property for the use of engineers afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
So we are. This is something very important for us, actually, and I think the English abbreviation is GRDP, like for the privacy, and this is something on our agenda and something that we are very fond of and we take absolutely serious.
Yes, I know. But sometimes there's a gap between EU regulations and the way they are implemented in real life. But nevertheless, good to know. I keep going on sunbathing in my backyard. Thank you. I come to you, Mr. Peter Lautenbach. What about drone application in the Netherlands, in Holland? Is it usual? Is it taking place?
It's taking place because we see the advantages of using drones, but we're not as far as they are in Germany, and that is all about regulation. Jan, you mentioned also something about dating in the sun and coming drones. So we have to do something. We have to talk about the regulations and how to use them. We use them now for inspections of bridges and yards, so the places where trains are, rolling stock is standing in the night, overnight, and will be cleaned over there. And but we're not using it for line inspections, and now we're using helicopters for that. So that's also a bit about privacy and bathing and so. But we are hoping that we can use drones in the near future much more.
Yes, because that's a question from the audience. ProRail is using choppers, helicopters, and of course we think they're much more expensive than just a simple drone. So that might be the way to the future.
Yes, it's absolutely the way to the future, but you have to also respect the regulations, and we still have some regulations in the Netherlands that doesn't allow us to use the drones in the way we would like to do. So, and we're talking about it, and we have good hopes that we can in the near future also use drones for line inspection.
Okay, thank you so far on this innovation as drones are concerned. We now get to some specific innovation taking place on the Dutch side. The Wonderline, not only the Wonderline, also other railway connections in Holland have the problem, as I would say in English, weak soil. The problems around the railway embankment. If there are coming more trains per hour, if they're heavier, if they're speeding up, some measures have to be taken how to deal with this weak soil. And this, for the start, we will be watching the video from ProRail together with the University of Delft and the agency Deltares. Please.
Het aantal reizigers en het goederenvervoer groeit fors. De komende decennia willen we met zwaardere, snellere en meer treinen gaan rijden. Een groot deel van ons spoornetwerk is al lange tijd in dienst, ligt veelal op een slappe bodem en wordt door deze groei veel zwaarder belast. Het is onzeker of de baanlichamen de groei op het spoor aankunnen in een veranderend klimaat. Daarom doen we onderzoek. Hoe reageert het baanlichaam als we vaker gaan rijden met zwaardere treinen en een hogere snelheid? Hoe reageert het baanlichaam op zwaardere cyclische belasting? Wat is het effect op waterspanningen in het baanlichaam bij toename van treinverkeer? Welke grenzen stelt de ondergrond aan het rijden met hogere snelheid? Het is cruciaal om onderzoek te doen naar deze effecten. Om meer inzicht te krijgen wat er in de toekomst mogelijk is. Zo kunnen we beter bepalen op welke plaatsen maatregelen nodig zijn en ontwikkelen we verbeterde beoordelingsmethoden. Daarmee maken ProRail, Deltares en TU Delft toekomstige groei op het spoor mogelijk.
All right. Thanks for this video. Thanks to ProRail. Thanks to you all for learning a bit Dutch, because it was only in Dutch. So I give a short summary and some certain remarks. It was about the embankment and the stability of the railway embankments. As I said, there are starting to run more trains. Mobility is increasing, trains are getting heavier and they're speeding. They're going at a higher speed. This all is having effect on the stability of the whole embankment. You might say everything at soil, ground, underneath the railway track. Also, there are effects from the hydrogen aspect, water and drought, etc. And this all comes together and has been investigated. This research has been done by the partners, among others, ProRail, as I mentioned. Mr. Lautenbach, what exactly is the condition of the soil at the Wonderline? Because we noticed that at some points we have this kind of problems down there.
First of all, I apologize that we only had a Dutch version, and thank you for your summary, Jan. I think it was very good and summed it all very well. Only the survey has to be conducted in the next year, so it's not already ready. So we have the results in the end of 2022. And yes, we have some places on the Wonderline with weak soil, and there we have to take some measurements.
Okay, and the results from this research, will they be applied on the Wonderline track?
Yes, in principle, of course, because we want to extend our knowledge about the stability of the embankment. And we will imply that in all the measures we have to take, but they also be there on time. So it's a bit looking forward now. When do we need it, and when are the results over there? But in the project itself, there will be also we also make surveys to see how the soil is reacting on the track.
And Mr. Pfeiffer, I'm very curious. How is this on the German side of the border? How are you coping with weak soil?
Well, we actually do have probably very similar problems. And I'm not an expert in soil, but I've asked a couple of colleagues, and I know that we use georadar to look into the ground. But for, let's say, being really certain, we need boreholes and have more information about the soil. And georadar only helps us to find the correct locations to then do boreholes and look at the soil in detail. Concerning the methods of stabilization of soil, I'm not sure we have so many embankments in this area. I think most of the tracks are rather flat on the ground in the German sections, but I'm not sure because I'm not planning specialist in the project, so don't take this too seriously. But we do have some methods which are rather typical for Germany, actually. I think one of them is called, let me look into my cut, mix, inject method, I think it's called. So we dig out some soil, mix it with other components to stabilize it and bring it back into the ground. I think this is something which is planned to be applied to Wunderline in the next years. And let me just say one more thing. I actually visited TU Delft online, so I'm very fond of your colleagues from the project. They have a wonderful course about railway engineering for beginners, let's say. And I took that online course a couple of years ago, which was very nice. So thank you.
That's very good to hear. Now, on the implementation of innovations, that can sometimes be hard. How are you dealing, and this is a question to both of you, how are you dealing with maybe colleagues or organizations who are maybe somewhat hesitant to these innovations? Mr. Pfeiffer.
Well, that's a huge problem, actually, because railway engineering is such an established field of expertise. And our innovations are usually looked at as being maybe not up to the necessities, and sometimes they may not even be. Maybe these engineers who have a lot of experience and have worked in different ways, maybe they are correct, but innovation only comes when you try, and you fail and you have to try again, and you fail and you have to try again until you find better methods. So I think we just have to continue to innovate and look into these things and convince people. And I think we're on a good way.
All right, and Mr. Lautenbach, quick reaction from you?
Yes, we have a division called Innovation, and they're doing a lot about a lot of innovation in a lot of ways, zero emission and the soil and a lot of things. And it takes a lot of time to test things, and it's always in the railway section. And I recognize what my German colleagues is saying. There is safety is very important in the railway section. We have to be safe at all times. So that takes some time, and some new techniques will be proven that it is safe and that it's okay. So there is a lot of time for testing, and then there is a procedure within ProRail to, we call it vrijgeven, but it means that you can use it, and that's an official point in the whole procedure. And after that, you can use it. But it takes time because we want to be sure that what we are doing is safe at all times.
Thank you, both of you. Now it's time for a short break. Maybe you're in need of a sanitary stop, or you would like to pour yourself a fresh cup of tea or coffee. You can do that now. We will be back at 14:20. And in the meantime, you can watch a video on European Mobility Week. So we'll see you back in a few minutes.
Yes, welcome back. Thank you for joining us for the part after the break. We're now continuing with Wonderline and connecting regions, connecting the region on the German side, the Dutch side, and all this is done by the Wonderline within the region also of the Ems-Dollard region, which of course stands also for enhancing cross-border cooperation. We have three, I might say, important regional representatives. We have Mrs. Cora-Yfke. She's the mayor of gemeente Oldambt. Welcome to you for being here with us. We have Mr. Thorsten Slink. He's the managing director, Hauptgeschäftsführer, Chamber of Commerce, IHK, Ostfriesland, Papenburg. Nice to have you in our meeting. And we should be having, or soon will be, Mrs. Konneman. She is Bundestagsmitglied, heeft een Nederlandse moeder, spreekt ook wat Nederlands, but sorry, at this moment she's still in another meeting, so we hope she will be joining us as soon as possible.
Yes, to start with you, Mrs. Sikkema, you are the representative of the Chain Mobility Network. And do you think the Wonderline, also being active on a European level, do you think the Wonderline does enough for the region, for a community like Oldambt?
Absolutely. I'm sure that it will give our total region a boost because it's easier to go from Groningen to Bremen with lots of stops in between. And I'm sure that it will improve the economic power in that area. And it's very good that we work together to try to get this ready with each other.
And thank you, Mr. Schlink. Now the connection Wunderline Wirtschaft. The Wunderline is above all a railway connection. What's the reason for you as a Chamber of Commerce, that is companies and small-sized enterprises and Wirtschaft, to support the Wunderline? Because you are, in fact, you can say one of the founding fathers.
Ja, vielleicht erstmal Hallo, Frau Konnemann. Sie ist jetzt gerade dazugekommen. Herzlich willkommen. Ich mache das auch gerne auf Deutsch. Ich finde das immer unheimlich spannend. Cora und ich sitzen auch im EDR-Rat und wir treffen uns immer zwischen Deutschen und Niederländern und reden dann Englisch. Ich habe zwar eine englische Frau, aber ich sage es trotzdem mal auf Deutsch. Für uns ist die Wunderline halt ja jetzt schon seit quasi über einem Jahrzehnt ein ganz wichtiges Thema, weil es uns natürlich darum geht, unsere beiden Länder besser miteinander zu verbinden. Und wir versprechen uns natürlich für unsere eigene Region auch einfach eine bessere und schnellere Bahnanbindung, nicht nur Richtung die Niederlande, sondern die Wunderline erstreckt sich ja über Oldenburg nach Bremen und im Grunde genommen ja eigentlich weiter nach Hamburg, Kopenhagen und wo auch sonst immer noch hin im Osten von uns. Und das ist für uns als IHK immer der Punkt gewesen, warum wir gesagt haben, wir machen da mit. Ich habe im Moment noch ein ganz besonderes Eigeninteresse. Meine Tochter studiert in England und wenn sie jetzt an Weihnachten mit dem Zug zurückkommt, wie die jungen Leute das hier jetzt machen, fahre ich dann mit dem Auto nach Groningen, um sie da abzuholen. Eigentlich wäre sie ja mit der Bahn dann bis nach Emmen durchgekommen. Aber da kann man halt eben auch sehen, wie wichtig auch diese Zugverbindung auch für die Menschen in unserer Region ist und eben nicht nur für die Wirtschaft. Was für uns halt eben auch ganz wichtig ist bei dem Projekt, ist auch natürlich, dass wir eine Balance finden zwischen Güterverkehr und dem Personenverkehr. Da sagen wir auch als Wirtschaft, da müssen wir auch schauen. Deswegen müssen wir auch auf deutscher Seite unsere Strecke optimieren, insbesondere dann auch zwischen Oldenburg und Bremen, wo ja sich auch noch die Zugverkehre von Wilhelmshaven auch noch auf die gleichen Eisenbahnstrecke begeben. Und das ist nicht nur Wilhelmshaven, sondern auch Prag und Nordenham. Da kommt auch ganz viel. Und deswegen ist das für uns auch einfach eine Chance, unsere Anbindung hier im Nordwesten insgesamt zu verbinden. Und natürlich hoffen wir alle, dass die Friesenbrücke ja dann nun auch wirklich bald uns dann auch wieder miteinander verbindet.
Mrs. Konneman, Frau Konneman, mevrouw Konneman in het Nederlands. Hartelijk welkom. U bent ook nu aanwezig.
Ja.
Heel goed, heel mooi.
Precies.
En u verstaat en spreekt ook een beetje Nederlands.
Ja, omdat mijn moeder uit Nederland komt, uit de buurt van Winschoten en of Termunten, uit een klein dorpje namens Woldendorp.
Oké, dat klinkt alles heel bekend en heel Nederlands. Heel leuk en heel goed dat u erbij bent. Vanuit Berlijn neem ik aan. Online aus dem Bundestagsbureau, oder?
Precies, ja. Ik ben hier in Berlijn. Ik heb een view op de Reichstag. En we hadden vandaag een heel grote ruzie. Wegen de wetgeving in Sachen Corona.
Okay. Ja, Streit, eigentlich möchte ich nicht über Streit reden, aber ich mache mal weiter auf Deutsch auch. Sie sind CDU, Sie sind Abgeordnete aus der Grenzregion. Sie kennen die Niederländer, die Deutschen, Nordwestdeutschland, Groningen absolut gut und Sie vertreten die Interessen da aus der Region ganz weit weg in Berlin. Ich sage mal ganz weit weg, weil, für Niederländer ist Berlin schon mal weit weg. Eine kritische Frage jetzt. Sie sind jetzt noch als CDU in der Regierung. Und ich würde sagen, dann ist es immer einfach, um Interessen zu vertreten. Weil Sie sind CDU, Regierung ist CDU, das passt wohl. Für die Niederländer mal, weil die Deutschen wissen das natürlich alle, zurzeit wird gearbeitet an eine neue Koalition. Ampel, ein Stoplicht of een Verkehrslichtkoalition, sozusagen mit Rot, SPD, Gelb, Liberalen und Grün, die Grünen. Wie ist dann Ihre Rolle in der Opposition? Können Sie dann noch viel bewirken, was betrifft die regionale oder vielleicht auch die Wunderline-Interessen in Berlin über die Bühne zu bringen?
Ich musste etwas lächeln, weil auch wenn Sie Mitglied einer Partei sind, die die Regierung stellt, heißt das nicht, dass automatisch alles so passiert, wie man sich das wünscht. Das heißt auch eigene Minister. Wir hatten in Sachen Wunderline sehr, sehr viel zum Beispiel zu tun mit dem Verkehrsminister Andreas Scheuer, aber auch mit dem Finanzminister Olaf Scholz, die übrigens aus 2 anderen Parteien kommen. Aber natürlich auch mit Kollegen aus meiner Partei, galt es immer wieder auch zu überzeugen und mitzunehmen. Das betrifft zum Beispiel die Friesenbrücke, die Herr Dr. Sling zutreffend angesprochen haben, weil sie ja zurzeit nicht nur das Nadelöhr ist, sondern einfach die Vene, durch die gar nichts geht, da ist der Stopp. Die müsste geschlossen werden. Und auch gegenüber einem christdemokratischen Haus dafür zu sorgen, dass 125 Millionen Euro zur Verfügung gestellt werden, ist auch für eine Christdemokratin ein hartes Stück Arbeit gewesen. Und von daher hat es geholfen, in einer Partei zu sein, aber es war am Ende Arbeit, Arbeit, Arbeit. Zum anderen, ja, die Ampel wird wahrscheinlich auch andere Akzente setzen. Aber was die Friesenbrücke angeht und damit auch die Wonderline, gab es immer in unserer Region, also in Ostfriesland, in Emsland, aber im Wesentlichen in Ostfriesland, lieber Dr. Slink, ein parteiübergreifendes Bekenntnis zu der Friesenbrücke, auch zu der Wonderline. Und das haben Ihre Konferenzen immer gezeigt. Dort saßen ebenso Vertreter auch aus dem Europäischen Parlament, der CDU wie der SPD, an einem Tisch, wie Bundestagsabgeordnete an einem Tisch gesessen haben. Das heißt, da sehe ich keine Probleme, jetzt in einer anderen Funktion auf unsere Region zu kommen. Ja. Wir haben andere Abgeordnete, die in der Regierung sein werden, eine Kollegin der SPD, ein Kollege der Grünen. Und es gilt, diese neu zu begeistern, weil die neu dabei sind. Aber wir haben andere Kollegen, die länger dabei sind. Das heißt, für die Region war es immer wichtig, an einem Strang zu ziehen. Das hat die Region auch stark gemacht. Und das sollte so bleiben, egal ob schwarz-rot oder grün-gelb-rot oder was auch immer.
Okay, danke. Danke auch für diese Einsicht, dass Sie sagen, naja, wir haben jetzt für uns als Titel Connecting Europe, Connecting Regions, aber auch Ihre Arbeit ist ganz viel Connection zu der Opposition, zu der einen Partei, zu der anderen, aber auch in Ihrem eigenen CDU. Und ja, eigentlich von uns aus einen herzlichen Dank, dass vor allem auch der Kollege Ferlemann da im BMVI in Berlin so ja großzügig sozusagen mit unterstützt, was betrifft die Friesenbrücke. Weil das ist natürlich sehr, sehr wichtig. Bitte.
Vielen Dank, dass Sie das auch erwähnen. Denn er hat wahnsinnig viel gemacht. Also Enak Ferlemann war eine Bank, auf die man setzen konnte, rechtlich wie finanziell und freundschaftlich.
Mrs. Sikkema, if we look at the connection between Wunderline and citizens, Wunderline being a large international project, how do you communicate that with your citizens who live along the line, for example, between Scheemda and Winschoten with the construction work?
Yes, it's you already said, how do you communicate? It's all about information and communication. And we have to pronounce the main goal. Why are we doing this? This is good for our region, not only on the Dutch side, but also on the German side. And so that's very important, but it's also very important to discuss with the residents, because it's not all fun for them. There will be lots of trouble and noise, and people are afraid that the value of the houses are decreasing, etc. So their own, for themselves, it's not very nice, but for the bigger picture, it is. And we have a resident group. And they talk with us and with the project people, and they can say what their concerns are, and so we are in dialogue with each other, and it's working very well until now. But it's not all fun, but they realize that the project will go on, and we talk about how can we do it that way that they don't have too much trouble during the project.
I can imagine it can have a great impact on them, but I'm hearing clear communication and transparency that that contributes to these plans, and we are Jan. Can you take
Also ich mache weiter. Vielleicht kommen wir danach noch mal drauf zurück, müssen noch mal schauen. Aber erstmal das ein größeres anderes Thema, nämlich Wunderline ist mehr als nur die Schienenstrecke. Herr Schlink, Frau Konnemann, more than just a railway. Sie haben gehört über Anschlussmobilität, über grenzübergreifende Zusammenarbeit. Aber vor kurzem gab es auch einen Bericht da, naja, liebe Jungs und Mädels, Mobilität im ländlichen Raum, das geht gar nicht ohne Auto. Das kann man glatt vergessen. Und wir als Wunderline mit vielen Stakeholdern versuchen das gemeinsam voranzubringen, dass es irgendwie eine Alternative gibt zum Auto in vielen Bereichen. Was halten Sie überhaupt dann von dieser Idee oder von so einem Bericht, die sagt, es gibt keine Alternative für ein Auto? Herr Schlink?
Ja, da gibt es natürlich keine einfache Antwort drauf. Also auch zum Bahnhof muss man ja irgendwo kommen. Und wenn Sie in Pevsum wohnen und alle 1 bis 2 Stunden fährt man Bus zum Bahnhof, dann nimmt man natürlich schon eher mal das Auto, um da pünktlich hinzukommen. Aber das Entscheidende für uns ist ja halt eben, dass ich das Auto dann nur bis zum Bahnhof nehmen muss. Und dass ich dann halt eben von da aus auch mit der Bahn bequem nach Groningen fahren kann oder schneller in Bremen bin, als ich das vielleicht heute bin. Und das ist ja für uns der entscheidende Faktor. Und dass wir auch grenzüberschreitend halt eben Güter einfacher transportieren können, als das vielleicht im Moment der Fall ist. Und einfach eine größere Verbindlichkeit auch da ist. Und wir hoffen ja auch, dass auch Pendlerverkehre entlang der Strecke dann auch ansteigen werden und halt eben auch die Passagierzahlen der Bahnstrecke eben zunehmen in dem Maße, in dem ich dann eben nicht mehr mit dem Auto rüberfahren muss. Und das ist halt einfach unsere Erwartung auch. Mobilität im ländlichen Raum, also wenn Sie in Ostfriesland wohnen, wo ÖPNV weitestgehend ja immer noch Schulbusverkehr ist und wo meine Kinder dann, wenn sie zu ihren Freunden wollen, am Wochenende kaum hin und her kommen, ja, da werden sie auch noch auf geraume Zeit ohne Auto nicht auskommen, weil es auch einfach viel zu teuer und kaum bezahlbar wäre, stündlich oder halbstündliche Busverkehre überall zu haben. Aber das sind, wie gesagt, 2 unterschiedliche Themen. Das Auto für die nahe Distanz, das werden wir uns sicherlich auf lange Zeit bewahren, aber die Bahn ist ja halt eben für längere Distanz vor allen Dingen auch da. Und da können wir, glaube ich, über die Wunderline ganz viel auch Positives für ganz Ostfriesland erreichen. Das ist ja auch unser Ziel, warum wir damit dabei sind, schon seit sehr langer Zeit.
Okay, und Sie, Frau Konnemann? Weil Sie sind in Berlin, bekommen natürlich viele Signale auch aus Bayern oder Schleswig-Holstein, die zum Teil auch ländlich, städtisch auf dieselbe Art und Weise geprägt sind. Wie stehen Sie dazu?
Ich finde, es gibt kein Entweder-Oder, sondern wir brauchen jede Form der Mobilität. Das heißt, diejenigen, die sagen, es geht nur mit dem Auto, es geht nur ohne das Auto, wird daneben liegen. Und das zeigt die Wunderline, wie auch unsere Region, dass es darum geht, die bestehenden Verkehre zu verbessern und zu vernetzen und auszubauen. Wir sind immer wieder bei dem Thema der Vernetzung. Ich war am Montag bei einem Bürgermeister der Region zu Gast, der eine Gemeinde hat, die gar nicht direkt an der Wonderline-Strecke liegt. Aber dort ist ein Haltepunkt der Bahn, der jetzt wieder aktiviert werden soll. Und das hat mit dem Ausbau der Wonderline auch mit dem Bau der Friesenbrücke zu tun. Und das heißt, dass diese Gemeinde unmittelbar einen Haltepunkt bekommen wird, wo zukünftig auch ein Schulbusverkehr ersetzt werden kann, der zurzeit über Bus stattfindet, wo ein Pendlerverkehr in die Kreisstadt abgebildet werden kann durch das Auto. Das heißt, dort kann die Bahn in diesem Fall auch im Kurznahverkehr eine größere Rolle spielen als bisher. Und das ist die Chance auch der Wonderline, weil wenn die Strecke ertüchtigt wird, weit über die Friesenbrücke hinaus, bietet es eben auch die Möglichkeiten, über andere Haltepunkte nachzudenken und damit sicherlich auch ein Stückchen mehr das Potenzial des Nahverkehrs zu nutzen, allerdings nur in einem eingeschränkten Bereich, weil wir auch nicht die Geschwindigkeit in Grenze zu sehr einschränken wollen, denn es soll ja eine schnelle Transportmöglichkeit am Ende auch von Amsterdam nach Deutschland bieten. Das heißt, ich kann auch nicht an jeder Milchkanne einen Haltepunkt machen. Von daher gilt es immer, eine abgestufte Betrachtung zu machen der einzelnen Situationen. Und da verbieten sich generelle Aussagen. Davor warne ich als Politikerin ohnehin, übrigens auch vor den Worten nie oder immer. Die sind in der Regel.
Thank you, Mrs. Konneman. In the meantime, we have received a question to you and also Mr. Schlink. And that is, the Wonderline is a cross-border cooperation and learning from neighbors is of course very important. In the Netherlands, the political focus lies on mobility by bike. How is this developing in Northwest Germany? To start with you, Ms. Konnemann.
Ich kann anschließen an meine letzte Antwort. Es geht darum, alle Verkehre zu entwickeln. Und natürlich entwickeln wir auch den Radverkehr. Übrigens zum Beispiel durch die Planung, den Ausbau von Radschnellwegen. Aktuell entsteht zum Beispiel ein solcher Radschnellweg zwischen Emden bis hin nach Papenburg, womit wir denjenigen, die heute mit einem E-Bike unterwegs sind und damit übrigens auch ihre Art von individualen Verkehr gefunden haben, um ihren Arbeitsplatz zu erreichen oder die Schule zu erreichen, schneller und ungefährlicher realisieren zu können. Das heißt, das eine tun und das andere nicht lassen. Natürlich in den Radverkehr investieren, natürlich auch in den Ausbau moderner Straßenverkehre investieren, wie wir es übrigens auch machen, jetzt zum Beispiel bei dem Neubau der Lederbrücke, die ebenfalls ansteht, mit neuen Verkehrsführungen, aber eben auch investieren in einen modernen Bahnverkehr. Und da hatte die Kollegin gerade zutreffend darauf hingewiesen, das bietet dann ja auch immer die Möglichkeit, zu Formen zu kommen, die weniger geräuschintensiv sind und damit auch das Leben an einer Bahn leichter machen, an einer Bahnstrecke.
Mr. Schlink, any additional thoughts on this?
Nein, Frau Konnemann hat das meiste ja schon gesagt, aber wenn Sie in Ostfriesland leben, dann fahren hier halt auch ganz viele unserer Mitarbeiter mit dem Fahrrad zur Arbeit. Also das erlebt man halt im Nahbereich, und das sind bei uns locker mal 10 Kilometer der Nahbereich, wo unsere Mitarbeiter mit Fahrrädern kommen, unsere Arbeitgeber, und dazu zählen wir uns auch. Wir bieten jetzt seit 4 Monaten E-Bike oder Bike-Leasing-Verträge an für unsere Mitarbeiter, die also auch auf dem Weg das Fahrradfahren noch gefördert bekommen, was auch gut angenommen wird. Also wenn ich mich jetzt nicht bald verändern würde, dann hätte ich das auch noch für mich wahrgenommen, aber da hat meine Verwaltungsleiterin gesagt, sie dürfen das jetzt nicht mehr, weil sie sind ja dann weg. Aber das sind nur so Beispiele, und auch auf meinem Heimweg, die Fahrradwege werden jetzt auch zunehmend saniert oder auch noch neue gebaut, da wo wir keine hatten. Also Richtung Norden fehlten teilweise noch Fahrradwege, da werden auch Lücken jetzt geschlossen. Und ich glaube, es ist halt genau wie Frau Konnemann gesagt hat, es gibt nicht das eine oder das andere, sondern wir müssen schauen, dass wir alle Möglichkeiten für Menschen mobil zu sein, ausbauen und verbessern. Und das hat dann am Ende auch immer positive Auswirkungen auf eine CO2-Bilanz natürlich, weil wenn ich mit dem Rad zur Arbeit fahre und nicht mit dem Bus oder dem Auto, dann ist das Ergebnis klar. Und das erleben wir auch hier zunehmend. Also unser Fahrradkeller, der früher halb voll war, der ist jetzt zu klein. Ist auch kein Keller, sondern ein Schuppen, und das ist nur ein gutes Beispiel dafür. Ich glaube, da werden wir auch noch sicherlich einiges erleben können. Aber wie gesagt, im Nahbereich, also wenn ich 25 Kilometer entfernt wohne und keine Busmöglichkeit habe, dann werde ich auch da in Zukunft weiter mit dem Auto fahren, und das wird man den Menschen auch kaum verbieten können.
And Mrs. Sikkema, mobility by bike is already a hot topic in your country. How is this policy implemented in Groningen, or more specific, Oldambt?
Well, as the other two speakers said, it's the combination of all traffic. It's about biking, and you need biking paths to make it possible for people to go by bike to railway stations or to go to work, etc. And it is a very important theme in Groningen and in Oldambt that it's also good for bikes to go from point A to point B. So it's very, it's high on our priority ladder. Oh, it's in English. It's a whole. But what is important in the Wunderline project is the combination and the Anschlussmobiliteit, dan chain mobility, ketenmobiliteit in het Nederlands.
Ja, heel goed. Ketenmobiliteit. En dat brengt mij zum letzte Frage. Kurze Frage und die große Herausforderung, the challenge, short answer. to the three of you. What is the main focus, die wichtigste Priorität für die Wunderline in den kommenden 2-3 Jahren? Und ich fange an mit Ihnen, Herr Schlink. Was muss die Wunderline vor allem tun?
Naja, also wir müssen den beschrittenen Weg natürlich weitergehen. Wir müssen unsere Planung weiter voranbringen und dann müssen wir natürlich irgendwann, auch wenn die Friesenbrücke dann wieder steht, müssen wir dann halt eben auch schauen, dass wir auf beiden Seiten weiter am Bauen bleiben, beziehungsweise erstmal ins Bauen kommen. Weil die Wunderline wird natürlich nur dann ihren Namen erfüllen, wenn aus den Planungen dann auch eben die Baumaßnahmen werden. Und das ist der nächste Schritt. Wobei ich auch da, das hat Frau Konnemann auch gesagt, auch was die nächste Bundesregierung angeht, eigentlich positiv gestimmt bin, weil ich glaube, Bahnverkehr, das ist auch wirklich für ganz Deutschland ein überparteilicher Konsens, dass wir da einfach mehr machen müssen, mehr machen können, da muss mehr investiert werden, weil wir haben ja noch viele Lücken, auch allein wenn Sie hier an unsere Verbindung nach Bremen denken. Ne?
Gut, ja, ich fange an, Sie zu unterbrechen, weil ich habe echt gebeten um eine kurze Antwort. Frau Konnemann, jetzt Sie. Worauf muss die Wunderline sich fokussieren, kommende Jahre? Kurz und knackig, bitte.
Auf den Bau. Zunächst den Bau der Friesenbrücke und dann natürlich den Bau der Abschnitte, die noch anstehen. Denn am Ende ohne Strecke, ohne Brücke läuft keine Wunderline.
Okay, danke. And Mrs. Sycamore, what's the main focus, priority for the Wonderline in the coming years?
Next to what is already said, I think make it less abstract for the people who are living nearby. It's a railway, it's something abstract, but why is it important? So communicate about that.
Okay, this brings me to an end. Herzlichen Dank, thank you, dank u wel, Frau Konnemann, Frau Sycamore. Und ein letztes Wort an Sie, Herr Slink. Sie sind erwähnt als Founding Father. Ja, das sind Sie tatsächlich. An der IHK Ostfriesland-Papenburg da in Emden. Und ich fand es ganz schön, in Ihrer vorletzten Antwort haben Sie gesprochen von wir. Wir müssen als Wunderline, weil vielleicht neu für viele Leute, Sie wechseln den Job. Am 1. Januari, gehen Sie von Emden, IHK, nach Oldenburg. Und ich hoffe, dass dieses Wir-Gefühl, wir als Wunderline, dass Sie das auch da weiter in der Region, in Ihre neue IHK als Hauptgeschäftsführer vermitteln können. Ganz, ganz herzlichen Dank. Ich freue mich auf die weitere Zusammenarbeit und euch allen, ich hoffe, es geht Ihnen gut. Hartelijk Dank. Thank you very much.
Tschüss.
Tot de volgende keer. Doei.
It is now time for us to wrap up this meeting and look forward to the next 6 months. And we're going to do that with Tjeerd Posma, project leader of the Wunderline, and Götz-Friedrich Schau, referatsleiter of the Ministry of Niedersachsen. Good to have you here, Tjeerd, in the studio with us, and good to have you online with us, Mr. Schau.
Hello and good afternoon from Hannover.
Good afternoon. If I start with you, Mr. Posma, what are the main conclusions of this meeting for you?
Well, I learned a lot again. I think first is that we are on the right track with the Wunderline. I think we have a good governance. We have the planning on track. We have, I think, a right project with our chain mobility. If you look at the European goals, and I'm very proud of our German-Dutch team, which can deal with all the challenges underway. Second, I think we have learned that the future of the core comprehensive network will be combined. So we have more ambition, as Harold Ruiter said. We need more ambition. So for electrification as for seeing Wunderline as a part of the European network. And I think we heard we need more support for from our governments, the national governments, for financing, especially building step 2. Well, I think the cross-border cooperation, if you look at the innovations, worked very well. We learned from each other, DB-Nets and ProRail. I think, you see the spin-off of the Wunderline. And as last, I think in regional perspective, I think the Wunderline is from us all, and of course we have to talk about Wunderline, what's the goals. But I think if you see what we achieve with the chain mobility, it's really a project. It's more as a railway line.
That's a good message. The Wonderline belongs to all of us.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Xiao, it's for you, it's the first time attending the Wunderline community. How was it for you? What will you take home?
Yes, vielen Dank. Für mich war es total spannend zu sehen und zum ersten Mal hautnah mitzuerleben, welche große Erwartungen da in den ganzen verschiedenen Politik- und Aufgabenbereichen der Region und der Bevölkerung mit der Wunderline verbunden sind und wie facettenreich auch diese ganze Zusammenarbeit, die ich ja hier auch an meinem Schreibtisch hier so schon miterlebt habe, sich in der Praxis gestaltet. Also es sind so viele kleine Bausteine, die zusammengefügt werden müssen, um das große Ganze irgendwann hoffentlich bald ins Rollen zu bekommen und zu einem schönen Abschluss zu bringen. Und das habe ich heute die ganze Veranstaltung über auch durch diese vielen engagierten und auch enthusiastischen Beiträge nochmal hautnah miterleben können. Und das war für mich besonders spannend zu sehen. Und wir werden ja alles dazu beitragen. Und dafür haben wir ja hier in Niedersachsen auch ein kleines Team gebildet, um das ganze Projekt mit unseren Kräften oder nach unseren besten Kräften zu unterstützen. Und das werden wir gerne heute nochmal als zusätzliche Motivation mitnehmen für unsere tägliche Arbeit.
All right, Mr. Xiao, Mr. Posma, as we all know, we are having 2 projects from Brussels. And the recent days we have been working, networking, information meetings, lobby networks, etc., with all kind of representatives of European Parliament, European Commission and other organizations in Brussels, because we're now working, as you said, Mr. Schau, as you said, Mr. Posma, in this German-Dutch team on getting further support from Brussels. Could you tell us, Tjeerd Posma, and afterwards Mr. Schau, because you were there indirectly through the representative Heinrich Klopp from your Landesvertretung, what are the main results from these 2 days of talking, meeting, drinking coffee, everything online, but nevertheless, that's what you've been doing there. Please.
Yeah, well, I found out that there's a great enthusiasm for the Wunderline. They know the Wunderline very well, and if they look at the project as a whole, they say, well, you're doing well, you're doing fast, and well, we learned there as well. You should be perhaps more ambitious if you look to the future and positioning the Wunderline as an international Wunderline, as an international train connection. Well, we have to think about that, of course. And the second was there is a lot of support from Europe for our new safety Antrag, how you call it, application. I think we're on the right track as well on that part.
Mr. Schau, your reaction, please? Anything to add?
Ich würde mich dem anschließen, was Tjeerd Posma gerade gesagt hat. Auch ich habe gehört, dass in Brüssel dieses Projekt sehr, sehr gut ankommt. Das haben wir ja heute auch durch den Beitrag von Herrn Reuters schon gehört. Und das ist ein sehr, sehr positives Signal, was uns in unserer Arbeit auch wiederum bestätigt. Und ich hoffe, dass dieser Antrag dann auch auf einem sehr, sehr guten Weg ist. Nicht zuletzt dank dieser umfangreichen vorherigen Unterstützung in der Brüsseler Szene.
Mr. Xiao, if I'm staying with you for a moment, why was it so important to organize this Wunderline Community Plus today?
Ja, aus meiner Sicht ist es immer wichtig, bei solchen großen Projekten auch mal alle Beteiligten mit ihren verschiedenen Perspektiven an einen Tisch zu bekommen oder hier virtuell zusammenzuschalten, da wir uns ja leider wegen Corona wieder auf absehbare Zeit wahrscheinlich nicht in real treffen können. Und deswegen war das heute, glaube ich, eine sehr, sehr gelungene digitale Veranstaltung, um nochmal alle Stimmen zu hören und auch nochmal diesen gemeinsamen Spirit für die Sache zu entfachen oder weiter am Laufen zu halten.
Thank you. Short reaction from you, Mr. Posma.
Well, I totally agree with Mr. Xiao. I think it's very important that you meet each year, and especially in this year, it's a European Year of the Rail. I think we succeeded to have a lot of people, and they learn the Wonderline. To know the Wonderline is always important. Otherwise, the energy flows away.
And if you look at the next 6 months, what are important steps lying ahead of us, Mr. Posma?
Yeah, well, Eline, we are working, of course, our new CFT application. I think that's important, and it's really taking a lot of time for us. We have the next year we have the start of the buildings of the last phase of building step 1. As of course the starting of the Friesenbrücke will start. The rebuild of the Friesenbrücke will start. We start with the vergunning, how you call it, the
implementation.
The implementation, but also the license to start at the double track between Scheemda and Winschoten. So we have a lot to do.
And Mr. Schau, important steps in the next 6 months?
Ja, ich sehe das ähnlich wie Tjerd Posma wieder. Für uns auf deutscher Seite sozusagen ist in den nächsten 6 Monaten, und das passt auch ganz gut, die Frage zum Zeitplan, der Wiederaufbau der Friesenbrücke. Das ist natürlich eine Grundvoraussetzung, damit das Projekt auch nachher wirklich ohne Schienenersatzverkehr von Bremen nach Groningen durchfahren kann. Und die Friesenbrücke, das ist ja so die aktuelle Planung von unseren Kollegen der Deutschen Bahn, die wird ja gerade werden die Reste beseitigt und abgerissen, und ab Mai, Juni, wenn alles gut läuft, soll der nächste Schritt, nämlich der Wiederaufbau, stattfinden. Und das wäre ja von jetzt angerechnet genau in 6 Monaten, und das ist ein großes Ziel, auf das wir alle hinarbeiten, und auch, ich glaube, in der Region, das mit ganz großen Augen und mit viel Aufmerksamkeit verfolgt wird. Als sichtbares Symbol letzten Endes auch für die Wunderline, wenn die Friesenbrücke natürlich nicht ausschließlich für die Wunderline zur Verfügung steht, aber das ist, glaube ich, ein sehr schönes, sichtbares und auch modernes Symbol, wenn es denn dann fertiggestellt ist, was auch, finde ich, sehr schön zu dem Projekt passt.
Thank you, both of you, for being here, and I wish you good luck with our Wunderline, as you call it, and bringing it 1 step further, or maybe 2 or 3 steps further.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Schau.
Dankeschön.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being in this Wunderline Community Plus Connecting Europe, Connecting Regions meeting. It was great to have you with us. It was great, thanks to all the speakers, to all the contributions, to knowing that we should be more ambitious, that we have all kind of future challenges. It was very nice. And thank you, audience, listeners, etc., for all your remarks, your critical questions, your input, which will be collected by us.
Yes, and of course, as already said, you can watch the meeting again on YouTube. It will be on there in the next couple of days. Thank you, Jan. It was a pleasure doing this with you.
Thank you, Alina, colleague and co-moderator. It was great to be here with you in the studio presenting this. Thank you. And we hope, of course, to see you next year in a real physical meeting, to be more interactive, to be networking afterwards with real coffee and real wine, if it's up to me as a Dutchman. Thank you and stay healthy. Groetjes van Groningen. See you. Goodbye.